Audio. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Good afternoon. Today's Monday, February 27th, 2017. Welcome to the Public Works and Gain Reduction Committee. I'm Chairman Councilmember Joe Buscaino. I'm joined by Mr. Rue, and Ms. Martinez will soon join us. If I can direct your attention to the agenda. We would need to continue item number 7. You okay with that, Mr. Rue? Yes. How many days do they need on 7? For the next meeting. Okay, so without objection, we'll continue item number 7. And let us take consent, unless you want to pull any of these items, Mr. Rue, items 5, 6, 8, and 9. 5, 6, 8, 9. Okay, we'll approve these items on consent without objection. And then we can reconsider these items once Ms. Martinez arrives. So with that, let us take item number 1. In fact, you know what? I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, let's take item number 1. If want to read that into the record, please.
Yes, John White, City Clerk. Item 1, Board of Public Works report relative to a budget request for staffing and contracting authority to create and operate the Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration and Safety and related actions.
We have one comment. Speaker card, Mr. Tom Williams, please come forward. Oh, I'm sorry, we have to wait for another member. Okay, so with that, I see in the audience Board Commission President. Okay, we'll defer to Mr. Campos. And then Mr. Nook, who's here. Good to see you. And just for the record, we also have in attendance our Board of Public Works Commission President, Kevin James. Mr. Campos.
Good afternoon, Fernando Campos, Executive Officer with the Board of Public Works. Council members, it's my pleasure to be before your committee today to present an item that has been in discussion and formation, not only with the Board of Public Works, but also in collaboration with the Department of Transportation, our CAO's office, our CLA's office, and our City Attorney's office. So this is definitely a group effort, a collaborative effort to propose before you a formation of the Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration. I am joined here today with our Petroleum Administrator, Uduak Intuk, and then also our Board President, Kevin James, who will be available to answer any questions that you may have. Just really quick, just to give you some history regarding this item. The board office, or the City of LA, first adopted its first ordinance regarding petroleum administration or oil administration back in 1945. Since the 50s and 60s, there's been a series of recommendations that the city has undergone through, not only to increase safety and compliance, but also how to administer these franchises and also these oil companies and industries in terms of what we use and how we use our city services. Many of those changes happened between the 50s and 70s, and in 1957, the then City Council adopted a new office and approved a new office called the Oil Management Office, which created and had about 6 to 10 individuals housed within this office. One of the recommendations at the time was to have a commission oversight to look at this office. However, at that time, the City Council did not recommend having an oversight of some sort. Today's proposal before you actually does include a very similar structure. When we were going through our formation in terms of what resources and how do we fund this office, we were looking at what was proposed back then, what is it that we need now, and how do we get there. So ironically, at the end of the day, after several months of planning, we landed with 6 positions that are being proposed before you. Your council, a couple of months ago, recommended that any actions having a fiscal impact be deferred until fiscal year 17-18. So this board office is respecting and complying with those instructions and deferring our request until the fiscal year 17 and 18 budget. However, I do want to stress to you that any further delays after July of 2017 will start having an impact on the board office, our activities, and what we envision Mr. Intuk to do over the course of his tenure here with the City of LA. So we are recommending 6 positions: 1 senior environmental engineer, 1 environmental compliance inspector, 1 senior management analyst, and 2 management analysts, and 1 administrative clerk. These positions will be divided into three different functions. First, the contract and franchise agreement function, which would oversee not only the 50 or so franchise agreements that we currently have, but they would be also responsible for billing, collection, and making sure that the day-to-day activities and operations in this office would be functioning properly. One thing that I will stress in this office is if there is any position that is not approved or it's not recommended to be there, then we would have to go back and look at what would have to give in terms of not providing the services. Again, it is a three-individual function that we're proposing. One senior management analyst, two to oversee the franchise agreement, one management analyst position to do billing and collections. The billings that we do every year results in about $20 million for the city of LA. So we want to make sure that this function is not only covered, but also make sure that we bring a little bit more rigor into the process. Speaking with our petroleum administrator over the last few months, we are coming up with a game plan in terms of what the city can do to improve its operations, increase efficiencies, and also potentially increase our revenue stream or creating new revenue streams for the city of LA. The item before you does not discuss those revenue streams at this point. It's just a matter of forming the office. Again, it's 6 positions. The first 3 positions that I mentioned is in our franchise and contract administration function. The second function will be our safety and compliance function. In that function, we are proposing 1 environmental compliance inspector, 1 management analyst, and then also 1 senior environmental engineer. This function will focus not only on safety and compliance, but will be our first face to deal with our community services. In addition to that, we are looking at having a community outreach group or function within this office. That function is not being proposed to be filled at this point in time simply because we're trying to figure out how many meetings our petroleum administrator will be attending. At this point, it's several, and he can attest to those in a few minutes if you have any questions for him. But at this point, we're just moving forward with safety and compliance and also the franchise agreement. The other major change that is being recommended before you is to make a series of amendments to several sections in the administrative code and also the municipal code. These changes are ordinary, if you will, in terms of getting the function transferred properly from the Department of Transportation over to the Board of Public Works. In addition to that, it also aligns the powers and duties and also some oil district requirements that are required for our petroleum administrator to oversee this function. One of the changes in the administrative code is adding an amendment to section 5.500, which your council has already requested a change to this to remove the word oil and also the word public right-of-way. What we are proposing before you today is not only to make those changes, but to add in a third change to that, and that is to allow this board office to have the first 10% or up to $1.5 million, whichever is greater, to fund this office first before any distribution of revenues are sent out to the general fund and also to your council offices. Again, it's 10% or $1.5 million, whichever it is greater. Last but not least, we are asking for just a series of changes in terms of transferring files from the Department of Transportation, the City Administrative Officer office, and then also making any technical changes that may be required to implement these functions and proposals. So with that, I'll take any questions that you may have. We do have our Petroleum Administrator here and our Board President that may answer any questions that you may have as well.
Thank you so much. Mr. Intook, thank you so much again for taking on this leadership role. Happy to have you on board. Mr. Rue, any questions? You good? So it's my understanding that the city doesn't have a good grasp on the locations of all of our gas pipelines. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'll let our Petroleum Administrator answer that question, but just briefly, we are currently working in response to a motion that was passed by Council, not only to look at all the oil districts, but plotting these districts out there and the oil wells, whether they're abandoned or active.
Yeah, what's the game plan on moving forward on identifying?
In terms of the game plan, I'll have Mr. Intook provide that response.
Hey, good afternoon, Council. Thank you for seeing me. Yeah, we do have some pipeline data. The fire department has an MOU with the Office of State Fire Marshal to provide pipeline location. specifically for public safety. You know, if there's a fire and they need to know that there's a jet fuel line nearby, they have that information. But as far as our DOT pipeline tracking, it's been a paper system. So moving it over from DOT to Board of Public Works, we will be able to request shape files.
Digitalize them.
Digitalize them
rather.
into a GIS system or
Got it.
ArcGIS, so that way we can go through and have our GIS people specifically, update for every council district to say this is the current pipeline footage per district. Right now we have it in paper copy and it's an approximation. So we've already started the process with the Office of State Fire Marshal for the Board of Public Works to be able to get access to those files. And now when we go into these new franchise agreements, we'll be able to add that as a requirement that each franchisee provide a digital shape file or digital file for our GIS system.
Thank you for that. Mr. Rue.
In the report, it says 10% or 1.5 million for the maximum expenditures. Is there some sort of, what's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, so here's the logic that we use to look at that. So the city as a whole brings in about $20 million in revenue for all franchise revenues that are coming in. Only the oil revenue right now currently gets that 50% split based on the real estate property trust fund ordinance, which is 5.50. The other remaining 16 million goes to the general fund. We use the 10% or the 1.5 million rubric based on the proposed positions that are before you. Those 6 positions are estimated about $730,000. We are proposing an additional $600,000 to be added to the unappropriated balance for next fiscal year to hire outside consultants, and this is in response to hiring geotechnical firms, looking at folks that can do some audits for us. So together it's collectively about 1.3 million. The proposal before you does not have any resources dedicated to community outreach and communications. So we envision this office to have some sort of field deputy at one point in time to go out there to the communities and represent not only Mr. Entuk, but the city of LA as a whole. We don't know what that would look like at this point in time, so we do estimate that it would possibly be another position or two. So therefore the $1.5 million is how we got to that dollar figure.
So we pass this today, it goes to council. Once council passes, you can start hiring ASAP.
Not that easy. So we are complying with your instructions to defer all recommendations until fiscal year 2017, 2018. Right. So it'll be part of the proposed budget that the mayor will present to you and our Budget and Finance Committee starting in April, early May for budget deliberations, but it won't go into effect until July of 2017. Then at that point, we would move forward. Again, it is going to have a 3-month impact, but we think that we can absorb that at this point in time. But I would stress after July, we really need to get moving in terms of renewing the franchise agreements. Your council approved those about a month ago. We have 36 that expired. We just renewed them for an additional 18 months. So therefore, it's very critical not only to get this team in place, but start getting our vision developed, strategic plans implemented so that we can be ready to start the next round of negotiations with our franchisees.
Well, Mr. Chair, I just want to, for the record, it can't be soon enough because I just want to say with Udoa, our petroleum administrator on board, I mean, it's not just for public works, but we've even used his expertise on mental health committee. So I can't wait till they get some more augmentation so we could get them to do more work.
Even now more than ever, Mr. Rue, we need more oversight on natural gas operations, oil operations, in light of what's taken shape at the Aliso Canyon and the Torrance Refinery. So really appreciate your comment. Thank you so much. We do have one speaker card. Mr. Tom Williams, please come forward on item number 1. Thank you for your presentation. Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon. Dr. Tom Williams, co-chair of Sierra Club Angeles chapter of Clean Break, which used to be fracking oil and gas. I did my first oil well in 1958. I have degrees in geology and worldwide experience in oil and gas. What they're asking for is not enough for the city of Los Angeles. We have some of the oldest oil fields in the western United States. We have a lot of unabandoned, unknown wells that exist throughout the city. Because in the 1920s, there was huge amounts of exploration, well drilling, bad abandonments. before current standards were imposed. Even current standards do not completely fill the well with cement. So we have a basic problem, safety. In
Thank you.
What? In
Thank you, Dr. Williams.
1985, I spent 3 days at the Ross Dress for Less store in the Fairfax district.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you, sir.
Need more money.
So with that, I do understand there are 5 recommendations. However, I believe authorizing positions and determining budget allocations and sources of funding is not the purview of this committee. So I would recommend approving the recommendations 2, 4, and 5 and allowing budget, finance, and personnel to weigh in on 1 and 3. So, Mr. Ryu, you're okay with that?
Yes.
So without objection, we'll approve items 2, 4, approve recommendations rather, 2, 4, and 5 moving forward. Okay, next item.
Item 2, controller report relative to an audit of the city's crucial utility franchise agreement with Southern California Gas Company.
Okay, we have from the Controller's Office, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Mr. Berga.
My name is Paul Alberga. I'm an internal auditor for the Controller's Audit Division. On September 23rd, 2016, the Controller issued our performance audit of the city's franchise agreement with the Southern California Gas Company. The overall objective of the audit was to evaluate the extent to which the city's franchise oversight of the SoCal Gas was adequate in protecting the city and its residents from financial, safety, and environmental risks. The audit evaluated the general terms and conditions of the city's franchise agreement with SoCal Gas and assessed the inspection and oversight functions performed by the city. We also evaluated how the city assured that the franchise fees received by the city were in accordance with the agreement. The scope of the audit included the gas utility franchise revenues and related activities from July 1st, 2013 through December 31st, 2015. We conducted our fieldwork during the spring of 2016. The report is organized around 3 primary findings relative to monitoring operations and safety, monitoring revenue and collections, and strengthening the terms of the franchise agreement. To address the audit issues, we included several recommendations addressed to policymakers, the Board of Public Works, and the CAO, many of which appear to have been adopted or are in progress of implementation. The first finding was that the city performed limited monitoring of franchise operations primarily because the city lacked qualified expertise in natural gas operations and regulation. At the time of the audit, the Administrative Code granted broad authority over public utility franchise oversight to the Board of Transportation Commissioners and regulation and administrative responsibility to the Department of Transportation. However, our audit found that neither the Board nor the Department of Transportation had requested information on natural gas franchise assets, appurtenant facilities, or supporting records, without which the city cannot effectively verify that safety, security, and operational requirements are being met. We recommended that city policymakers support a new franchise agreement that transfers the administrative responsibility for natural gas utility franchise operations to the Department of Public Works, and that the Board of Public Works recruit a petroleum administrator with sufficient expertise to administer the franchise agreement and advise the board and policymakers on natural gas issues, and to establish a monitoring program to evaluate the safety and security compliance of franchise-related assets and operations. Our audit also found that the city's permitting and inspection of work performed by SoCal Gas is focused on the maintenance and safety of the public right-of-way, just like city streets, but does not ensure that the safety and security of franchise pipelines, assets, or operations. The city relies upon SoCal Gas itself or upon external regulators to provide this assurance. We recommended that the Board of Public Works establish a program under the Petroleum Administrator to monitor and report on the performance of the franchise, including creating and maintaining a system to inventory the franchise pipelines and appurtenant facilities, using existing resources, assess franchisee conformance with applicable pipeline code requirements, pertaining to franchise assets and appurtenant facilities within the Los Angeles area, and reporting to the Board of Public Works and City Council on franchise performance and regulatory issues that impact gas utility franchise operations. In addition, we recommended that as part of the U-Permit plan check process, the Board of Engineering should add a self-assertion requirement confirming that SoCalGas's construction plans fully comply with the pipeline code. This assertion should be verified as part of the U-Permit plan check application process and periodically reviewed by the Petroleum Administrator. The second section of our report focused on the monitoring of franchise revenue and related collections. While franchise fees from SoCalGas have averaged approximately $17.6 million annually, the city lacks assurance that it received appropriate amounts since there was no monitoring or periodic audits, and the Department of Transportation lacked expertise to determine if variations in franchise revenue were reasonable or appropriate. We recommended that the Department of Finance assist the newly established Office of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration and Safety to implement procedures relative to franchise revenue oversight and offered some specific suggestions. The final section of our audit discussed opportunities to strengthen and enhance the city's natural gas utility franchise agreement in terms of revenue opportunities and the insurance and risk management sections to better protect city interests. We appreciate the community's attention to this audit, and we are available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please thank Mr. Galpern for his leadership on this item and the item we're going to hear in a bit. Colleagues, any questions on item number 2 before you? Okay, hearing none. Then let's see, I do want to approve. There's a recommendation here. So we'll approve the controller's report with a technical clarification that recommendations 2 through 5 should be directed to the Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration and Safety. Colleague, you okay with that? Okay, that'll be the order. So now, if we can, Mr. Clerk, we are going to reconsider, now that we have a quorum with Ms. Martinez, we're going to reconsider items 1, 5, 6, 8, 9. And we can take item 4 on consent unless Ms. Martinez, you want to hold that? Mr. Rue? Okay. We'll take item 4 on consent. So, again, without objection, that'll be the order, Mr. Clerk? Fantastic. Item number 3.
Item 3, control report relative to modifying the city's street damage restoration fee paid by utility companies to fully recover the costs of street resurfacing and repairs needed to mitigate the impact of excavation.
Hi, council members. Thank you, Chair. That's okay. For the other item.
Okay, Jenny, how are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. Hi, council members. My name is Jennifer Rivera with the Controller's Office, and thank you so much for hearing this item today. Hopefully, I won't butcher the message from my boss. Sorry he couldn't be here directly, but real quick, you all have a copy of the letter we sent to Public Works President Kevin James, who is here with us today, who now has sent us a correspondence back agreeing with many of the issues we have brought up in the letter and has agreed to expand the scope of the study in addition to helping expedite that report to come to us, hopefully for you all to look at before budget. The letter itself really outlines a few issues that the controller felt we needed to look at in order to optimize collections, specifically the street type and designation. Currently, the SDRF does look at commercial versus local. It hasn't been updated in a few years, and we felt that after speaking with Dr. Shaheen, there's a lot of other streets that could be updated with their designation. This is important because, as you all know, the a commercial street pays a much higher SDRF fee than a local fee. In addition, we should also look at the useful life. Currently, it is set 15 to 25 years. So and a specific street may actually have a much longer useful life, but the city does stop collecting SDRF after the life is defined via the SDRF ordinance. Of course, there's a cost that we should be looking at as well, specifically to how much we're collecting both from direct and indirect costs. So again, we appreciate you taking the time to hear this today in committee. We are very grateful to Public Works President Kevin James, as well as Bureau of Street Services, who has been excellent in this process. And we look forward to continuing to partner with both of them and with you all as well as we move this forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Rivera. And if you recall, in 2014, I introduced a series of motions to improve the efficiency and cost effectiveness of the city's pavement preservation program. And one of those motions directed the CAO, with the assistance of the Bureau of Street Services, to revise the street damage restoration fee to ensure that we attain full cost recovery when utility companies cut into city streets. And as we know, utility cuts weakens the structural integrity of the street and reduces the usable life. If I can call up Mr. James, our Commissioner, Board President. Thank you for your work on and responsiveness to this body's recommendations, and I'd like to hear from you about the study. When do you anticipate it being completed so we can move forward?
Well, we've got Keith Mose, who's the Assistant Director of the Bureau of Street Services, who can talk more to the details of the study. And when our date might be for getting it completion. Let me just say, first of all, Councilman, thank you for the invitation to be here today. I thought it was important for me to attend to really put an exclamation point on the collaborative nature of the process that we went through with the Controller's Office. The Controller, as was mentioned by Ms. Rivera, met with Dr. Shaheen regarding the subject and the scope of work of the report.
How did that meeting go?
I think the meeting went well. The Bureau was involved as well, and it really was a collaborative effort coming up with what the expanded scope should include under the Controller's leadership. I can kind of go through and pick apart various aspects of what I think ought to be in the report, but Dr. Shaheen's the expert. But the goal on getting to cost recovery, to full cost recovery, sounds a bit more simple than it really is. And when you read the Controller's letter that was sent to myself and to Mr. Sauceda at the Bureau of Street Services, you get a sense of what some of the issues that really are kind of outdated need to be looked at in this report. So one of the things that I wanted to ensure that your committee knew is that for the Board of Public Works perspective, we certainly approve the expanded scope, and we also approve the work with the CAO's office, working within the department to identify funds to pay for what the expanded scope would cover, as well as what an expedite fee might be. We don't have those numbers back yet, but once we get your approval and transmit these expanded scope to the contractor, then we'll get a much better answer of that.
Is the utility company cutting into our street right now as we speak with all this noise next to us?
I don't think so.
No, okay. Are we paving our street here? Huh? Okay.
Yeah,
Street services.
It's a different project.
Okay, got it.
But let me just to give you, not to go too far to take too much time. When you look at the face value of some of the recommendations that I think warrant some real questions, there was just a discussion about useful life of a street. And one argument I can make is a useful life of a street is as long as cars are moving on that street. Yet for 15 to 20 years, depending on streets, we're cutting off the SDRF. And it doesn't take into account many things, including what our improved asphalt plant will be producing in time with more durability of our asphalt. There are just all kinds of factors that go into what this comprehensive report will include. And when you get a comprehensive report like this, I think it's much better, well, I know it will be, much better to defend the city's position in negotiating or communicating with some of the utilities that might want to challenge one or more aspects of the report. Okay, thank you, sir. With that, Keith Mose, if you got a few minutes for him, would like to.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Commissioner. Ms. Martinez, have a question for the Commissioner? Kevin, if you can just come on back.
I didn't know whether the department had responded to the controller's letter. I just saw that you sent something on
Oh, yes,
Friday.
I'm sorry. We sent it on Friday.
But is there going to be more detailed response in terms of the recommendations that the controller is suggesting? Are you
No.
going to respond to any of that?
No, as a matter of fact, not only, we agree with all the controller's recommendations. Indeed, we worked with the controller's office in helping them develop the scope along with the contractor.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Keith Mose with Street Services. So we're very supportive of this calculation of the SDR fee.
Can you just speak closer to the mic, please?
Okay. We are very supportive of the recommendations that are being put forth by Dr. Shaheen and the Controller's Office on the recommendation to calculate new SDR fees based on functional life and structural life of the roadway. And working with General Services Division, who's been an integral part of this study, Dr. Shaheen randomly selected 50 select street sections and 30 local street sections for a total of 80. He performed a pavement condition index study on all sample units, developed a deterioration curve for patched and non-patched sections, and that's how he was able to develop pavement life for patched and non-patched areas. And basically we did coring samples on everything, and this based on structural data. From that, basically we're able to calculate, we're ready to move forward with calculating maintenance and rehabilitation costs due to utility cut patching, and develop a cost recovery fee schedule, and our report should be ready within a 12-month period.
You're good?
All right, thank you.
Those your crews outside, sir?
No, sir.
No, okay, fantastic. Thank you. Ms. Rivera?
Just really quickly, I wanted to thank Councilwoman Martinez for the question to Mr. James. Our expectation is that a more detailed response will be coming to the letter via the report from Dr. Shaheen. So just for clarity and confirmation on the record that that's the expectation from.
Yes, and what I think I misunderstood your question, Councilwoman.
No,
I thought you meant
it was a one-page letter that
Yeah.
basically said we agree,
agree
but
with
there
it,
was
yes,
there was no real substance to it. That's why I asked the question.
So the message was by the one-page letter. We wanted you to know that the Board of Public Works and the Bureau support the recommendations that were in the letter. There will be a much more detailed report coming forward that's the subject of really what we're all talking about. That'll be much more detailed.
Yeah, initially, when I got here, I didn't think you had responded to the letter. That was my initial question to the president, to the chair. But I saw that you sent a letter on Friday.
Right, correct, yeah.
So it gives us a segue to continue this item until we're looking at sometime this spring to get a more detailed response moving forward.
Well, Keith, what do you think?
If Keith can...
Basically, any expansion to the scope of work, it basically will cause it to delay, take a little bit longer, but basically we're working to have the report ready within a 12-month period, if not sooner.
We're obviously going to be asking for it to be sooner than that.
Yes.
Okay.
It depends on a couple of things, primarily the contractor's workload and availability.
Understood.
Yeah.
So just get back to Dennis on my team, and then we can anticipate scheduling this as soon as we get more information.
Right. And just to conclude my comments, I'm glad that we're looking at ways to recover our costs, but it does absolutely nothing if we're not inspecting our streets after these utility companies finish excavation to make sure that the work was done correctly. Or else we're spending more money on fixing shady work than we are on recovering our costs. So, but you know that.
I do.
Okay.
We do what we're funded for.
All right, thanks.
Thank you for your report.
Yep, thanks.
So with that, without objection, we'll continue item number 3. Okay, so with that, we'll now turn to general public comment. If I can call up Dr. Williams to come forward for general public comment.
General, good afternoon. Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council District Director. The basic issue for public works, how long will the pipes last? How long will the asphalt last? How long will the sidewalks last? Hey, isn't that part of maintenance? Or as the MTA likes to call it, state of good repair. Long-term maintenance is the real killer for LA. All public services, that is, buses have to be replaced, LADOT. Sewers, storm drains that blow out and then disrupt the streets, those need to be repaired before they blow out. So one of the questions is, are the funding, the payments that we make every month or every 2 months, enough to maintain our capital improvements for the duration of 100 years?
Thank you,
No.
Dr. Williams. So with that, we have no other business before this committee. Is that right, Mr. Clerk? Okay, so we are now adjourned. Thank you very much.